Dude, I am loving your podcast.
Love it.
Oh my
I
goodness.
mean, it all
Wow.
came. I mean, I don't know if we want to like put it on the. Where do we want to start recording? Is this part of that? You want me to kind of
Uh
give some of the background?
yeah, actually let's do
Sure.
that. Hey Ryan, it's
Yeah.
great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, glad to be
Um
here. Thanks, Dr. Cliff.
Before we dive into things, you've just started a brand new podcast. I'd love for you to just kind of give us a little like where that came from and what kind
Yeah.
of the inspiration was behind that.
Yeah. So was about a month and a half ago. Was just I'm always kind of writing for myself, kind of doing little Bible studies on my own. And I was like, I'm going to start putting this somewhere. So I started a Substack. Started putting some stuff in there, and something that's like been brewing, or at least a conversation that I have almost all the time. Even when I was still working on my PhD, I've had it now for almost 2 years now. But always talk about how worship is more than singing, and yet I function as a coach for worship pastors. I am a worship pastor. I'm a worship professor, and all of that. When I say all that, like when we say I'm going to take a worship class, we learn about the singing. We don't do a Romans 12:1 obedience class when we talk about worship. Even though worship is far more than that, we still function like it is just singing. So the Formation to Transformation, a worship devotional, is just a simple short form, 2 to 4 minutes every weekday, just unpacking a single verse at a time. A small attempt on my part to try to put a little bit of theological depth to the idea that worship is more than singing. Because I know, like, even the singing part, I teach worship students all the time, like the singing part at our church becomes so much stronger when we actually take the time to help teach our church that worship is more than singing, while still recognizing that doesn't mean worship leader get up on stage and talk for 10 minutes during the singing time while the preacher comes up afterwards and takes another 50. Like, I'm not saying that's where you're supposed to go with that, but yeah, it also came from that was working with Pastor Keys here at the church I'm at, New River,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm always kind of like dropping. He's like, you're always like saying little nuggets of things, and like they kind of just come out. Is there any, like, I would love to have a way to be able to help our team hear some of that. So this is, selfishly a little bit of like a tool that I'm putting into my worship team's hands that we can talk through. And then even, Church Collective's been around for 12 years. That was kind of the heart of where Church Collective started too. It's like, let's make some resources and see if other people want them. So this was just, my simple little attempt at putting it together. And yeah, I'm excited for the response I've gotten so far and just the conversations, and I'm just plugging away largely for me. I'm learning as I'm putting it together. And then, if I'm putting it out and having other people listen to it while I'm learning, great. So we'll see what happens. See if I can keep up the pace of doing, 5 a week. But
Yeah.
I got a
thought
running
about
start
that.
on it. So I'm trying. We'll see for now. So we started Psalm 23 about, being led through the valley by a shepherd, and then going over to John 10 where Jesus is like, hey, I'm the good one. I'm the good shepherd. Here's what that means. So still kind of just like plotting out. I know you texted me some suggestions on where to take it from there. So I'm trying to figure out how to like break it down. At one point I was like, let's start Genesis 1:1. And I was like, I'm not going to do the whole Bible. Like, anyway, so I'm jumping around.
That's great. Man,
Leviticus will get rough.
yeah, and you've gotten good response from that?
So
I
far,
just feel good. I just feel like it's so needed for worship leaders. Because you're right, we get focused on the pragmatic part of leading worship, that we don't focus on where is this coming from. We gotta feed the inside for it to come on the outside. So
Yep.
I really appreciate that, man. That's great.
Yeah.
With that, and I'll link to I'll link your Substack
Cool.
in our show notes as well. So
Yeah, awesome.
that'll be great. I know worship leaders and their teams would be very much encouraged by your approach to this.
Cool.
But to kind of get into our discussion for today, I know, and this is, I think your podcast is actually what kind of inspired me to kind of think about this a little bit. Is that, I think as those of us that plan songs for worship, we tend to plan with this idea that we want to create a moment for people in our worship services, or at least it's a trap we can fall into. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but I think sometimes that can take precedence over other things that are probably more important or need to be prioritized in our own personal walk with the Lord. And then let those moments kind of flow out of that. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how we as worship leaders can maybe prioritize the right things when we're planning worship, so that we're kind of going for the long haul rather than just those moments in worship that we feel like we need to manufacture or create for our people?
My generation of worship leaders, our generation of worship leaders, we came in and we've done a lot of the quote unquote attractional modern evangelical stuff, and we did it with good intent and good heart. And again, I tell my students all the time, like, I did the 14 Christmas services, I did the helicopter Easter egg drop, I did the fall festival for 20,000 people. Never in an attempt to like, hey, look how slick we are. It was just like we have these things at our disposal. You could even, go back to the Renaissance period. Like churches would put beautiful tapestries, and Bach would write amazing concertos for the Lord, but also highly
Hmm.
technically artistic and wonderful. So in a lot of ways, we're doing that for the church. But somewhere along the way, we started not even started. I think we've built a expectation for people that still runs today. Like people are still looking for the church that's doing the giant, amazing things for Christmas. And
Hmm.
we can rail about it. And there's a subsect of people on the internet who will watch like what the big churches are doing for Christmas, and they'll roast like, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to spend money on that? And it's like, well, you can say all that, but people are still coming. So the consumerism of the church exists. So I would rather than rail against it, I want to try to find a way to, again, that's part of where I'm putting this podcast together. Like I would rather find a way to try to help set people up and disciple them, because I agree. I don't think we need that to point people to the Lord, but we're living in the modern evangelical world, in a world where people expect that. So we
Hmm.
can, take our ball and go home and be upset about it. But I'd rather try to get in there and try to put an influence on it. So I guess that's my long way to say we're in the middle of, for those of you that are listening, like, awesome that you have a heart for it, because you wouldn't be listening to this if you weren't trying to figure it out for yourself anyway. But I just want to encourage you to maybe encourage you to realize that, yes, you're right. We don't need all the big attractional, amazing things, even just like that spiritual moment that we're looking for in a worship service, where it's like, oh man, I mean, I talk to people and students all the time where it's like, I went to this service, I went to this conference, and the Lord marked me, the Lord changed me. And I totally believe the Lord can
Right.
do that. But I also know we can breed sort of an expectation to where, like, every Sunday we're going in and expecting some sort of marked change moment. And I don't think God, as best as I'm looking throughout the Bible, he doesn't particularly do that. There are times where he does that, but they're relatively few and far between, versus like the Gospel of John, where the disciples are basically falling all over themselves throughout. Like Jesus will say something amazing, and they'll be like, and the disciples didn't understand. And he'll
Right.
say, like, one of you is going to betray me. It's the person I give this to is going to betray me. And then they hand it to him. And then immediately in John, it's like, and the disciples didn't realize it was Judas. They thought he was just going off to like give money for something. And you're like, okay, kind of clear right there. But
Yeah. Right.
like, if that's our example of discipleship, I think it's folly for us to think that every church service, every conference is supposed to have this marked moment. But again, we've lived in a culture where I made those moments. You've made those moments. I still appreciate those moments, and I'm still crafting worship services in ways that like flow well and like try to point towards something. So yeah.
So, with that in mind, how can we, as worship leaders, we still want to have corporate worship be meaningful and deep for our congregation, but how can we go into that planning? I don't know, like not allowing that to kind of like overtake our planning. That where we want to, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, how can we plan or how can we shepherd our congregation for the long haul? Like, rather than just like searching for a moment, because you're right, people are going to come, they're going to want to have that inspired moment. But I think you hit on a point of, for those of us that are worship leaders, we want to shepherd our congregation so that we're offering worship that's excellent, and we're offering worship that's displays the glory of God, but we want them to look deeper than that in their worship. So how can we help them with that?
Be a normal person. I think first off, be accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, spend time in the lobby. I think often the
Mm,
best worship comes from relationship. Big on spending time. with your team as best as you can. Even my team, we're starting a monthly gathering at one of our members' houses just to spend like nothing. We're going to do little devotional time and things like that, but nothing outlandish, just time, just investing time in them. Because the first step would be, okay, worship pastor, go out in the lobby and hang out with people. And that's works. Yes, absolutely. Even a church of 100, you'll have a hard time touching everybody. So it really does need to dig into, are you fostering that kind of hospitality in your team? Are you spreading I'm a big fan of like spreading out the worship leadership on the platform. Don't have it just be you, your voice. If you're the worship pastor, if you're the worship leader, like don't just have it be your only voice that's doing it. Um, Again, like tactically, find opportunities, maybe use my podcast or talk to your pastor or something like that, that you're putting out little somethings, even Instagram posts potentially from your church that continue to highlight that worship is more than singing. I joke about it because I still don't know how I feel about it, but it's the right thing to do. A lot of churches will get up there and say, we're going to continue our worship through our tithes and offerings. We're going to continue our worship in the sermon. I don't know. I mean, you can call me out on it, but every time I say that, I still feel like I don't like it. But it's like it's right. It's the right thing to do. But I don't know if it's just me bringing 25 years of like baggage to the church or
Hmm.
to like what we've done in
Yeah.
the church. But like things, finding moments like that, connecting with your pastor, having him make worship be more than singing, um, and a little bit of I mean small rants here. This whole thing is just rants, but but the thought too that I think sometimes we think too highly of ourselves as the worship leader and
Mm.
worship team,
Yeah.
because on the platform we do guide, we have control, we've picked the songs, like we are directing what's happening in the room, and I think somewhere in the middle of all that we end up feeling like we have this uh, weight on us to force people in the
Mm.
room to worship. And I know I've been guilty of seeing, people didn't sing that much. I'm bad. I did a poor job. People sang a whole lot. I'm awesome. I did really good. I think I
Yeah.
think breaking ourselves away from that and not thinking so highly of whether I control worship. And I always like tell my students this often. It's folly to think that you can control where I am with the Lord if I'm coming to church and you're leading me in worship. Like if I'm having a really poor week and I've not connected with God all week, I'm probably going to have a hard time connecting with the Lord, and that's not your fault. And
Right.
and there's nothing magical you can do. Um, I say nothing magical, but even like whatever you might be doing to like stir up my emotions if I haven't connected with God for a long time, maybe you'll do something, but I think it might all kind of be surface level.
Right.
Versus if I've been spending a ton of time with the Lord and I come in and maybe the worship team is just falling all over themselves and they're musically really doing a poor job. If I'm in love with the Lord, it doesn't really matter how good you are, how slick your transitions are, or how great your commentary is between the songs. If I'm good with the Lord, like it kind of doesn't matter what you do. I'm just there to worship the Lord. So that's freeing. It's not an excuse to
Yeah.
do badly,
Absolutely.
but like I think maybe not thinking so. Don't think so highly of ourselves. Who says that? James or Paul? Probably someone in there. Yeah. Don't no one should think so highly of
Yeah.
themselves in what they're doing.
Man, I think that's a trap we can all fall into as worship leaders. I think too that, with that idea of trying to control or trying to manipulate a situation, um, that's actually a pride issue, where we feel like, okay, the Lord is giving, and we do it in the name of serving the Lord. It's like, oh, the Lord's giving me this calling and this responsibility. And so, yes, we take it seriously, but I think sometimes we can turn it into a source of pride. And I think that's when we fall into the trap of getting like really discouraged when things don't happen because we've kind of built our identity around that. And I think first and foremost, we have to continue to remind ourselves that we only serve in this capacity because of God's grace and the fact that we just willingly need to continue to surrender and follow his leading. And that takes place in the planning, that takes place in the leading. We say that we want Jesus to be the main attraction. And I think a lot of times when we, as musicians, that's sometimes hard for us because of just the nature of music and the fact that we make music and that we lead music. It tends to kind of put the focus more on us. So, and it's not any, I don't think anything intentionally that we do, but I think it's just a snare that as worship leaders we need to be aware of when we're leading, because that can definitely be a trap that we fall into, where our music is going to coerce some kind of response, and if it doesn't happen, then when we have that expectation, we feel like we've let ourselves down, we feel like we've let God down, when all he really wants us to do is just kind of like you said, it doesn't matter if the band's falling all over themselves. We're coming to him with clean hands and a pure heart. And I feel like that's when the Lord really starts to use our offering for his glory. And the thing about it is I think when we think about it, when we do try to create those moments, there's nothing wrong with encouragement or inspiration. But I think as worship leaders, it's important for us to remember that as we're shepherding our teams, we're shepherding our congregations. We want to shepherd them for the long haul, not just for moments, not that those moments can't have impact, but as we're shepherding them, we want them to kind of deepen that through the long haul, through the good times and the bad times, the mountaintops and the valleys.
Mm.
And I think, you mentioned relationships, getting out in the lobby, meeting people. I think, and this doesn't mean that, obviously our goal is not to impress, and our goal is not to try to like help people see how much we know, or
Yeah.
but I think sometimes we can guide our congregations to a deeper level of intimacy with the Lord, and that will last them beyond the service itself, when they leave the building, when they go out into their workplaces and their schools. I think there are encouragements we can offer in our corporate times that help them see the long haul, not just the moment. And I think that's where we seek the Lord and ask, Lord, uh, like Moses, I don't have the words. I can't really talk well, but I know that you can, and I'm going to surrender and allow you to speak through that. However, whatever you feel is needed for our congregation, so that we're not just feeling a moment, or we're not just experiencing a musical high, but Lord, that we're actually becoming, we're intimately knowing you more, not just in this moment, but throughout the rest of the week. And so I do think there's little things that we can say here and there, but obviously there's lots of ways that we can help shepherd our congregation.
I think even just the being intentional about the songs we pick. I know it's
Sure.
often said quote there were like the words that of the songs tend to stick to our congregation's minds more than the sermons. So just being aware of that. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
models like the tabernacle model, the Isaiah 6, like planning our services in a way that are really like gospel oriented and pointed towards the right things. And again, that's we're in I still remember getting started. I was always excited about, there was just a handful of worship movements that were putting out music. So it's kind of like whatever the new Hillsong album was, cool, we're going to do half of those songs. And now it's like there's 80 new songs every Friday. So it's a little overwhelming to figure out. Honestly, that's
Yeah, it
anytime
is.
someone's like, have you heard the new what? I was like, no, I haven't.
No. Yeah.
Like I rely on like a handful of people on my team. If they're really excited about a song, I'm like, cool, let's do that. And then I learn it.
Yep.
Because I just
Me
I
too.
can't keep up. But all that to say, like we're in a really great, uh, we have a really great opportunity to have just a lot of great music that we can do at our church, and maybe even a caution. I won't pick on any specific songs, but sometimes there's songs that are theologically perfectly fine, but maybe they're just like a little deeper than you might want your church to go to, or maybe they're touching on a topic that you don't necessarily want to get into. I think of one that like references dry bones in Ezekiel. It's like good song, but like maybe you're how many people in your church are aware of the Valley of the Dry Bones, and do you want to get into the theology of that? So even just little
Hmm.
moments of like, there's plenty of other good songs, or maybe maybe it is. I'm going to teach you about the Valley of Dry Bones, but like teach a little bit rather
Right.
than singing about them, and just
Hmm.
finding those little opportunities to help put context to what you're singing. Which again, don't talk before every one of your songs. You don't have to give a mini sermon for every single song you
Right.
do, like explain the
Absolutely.
transitions and all
Yeah.
that. But yeah, finding moments in there to put some context to what you're doing.
Yeah. I also think too, with that idea of like the language of the songs, I think, um, at least in my context, I'm in a fairly multi-generational church where we've got older folks and young couples all worshiping together. And I don't know. I feel like sometimes the language in some songs gets so poetic and
Yeah,
abstract that
sure.
it's like, I don't know what this is trying to say.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, just to help everybody, grasp what we're trying to like offer to the Lord on the same page, I feel like we just need to continue to remember the idea of clarity in the words that we say and the words that we sing.
yeah,
Because I think sometimes we can get so abstract and poetic that, it's like, where are we going with this?
yeah,
Are we just, because I think sometimes though that language is the language is used to stir up our emotions, which I don't think there's anything wrong with. I think, the Lord gave us emotions, and, he wants us to um, experience emotion guided by the Holy Spirit, obviously. But I think sometimes we try to create or stir up emotion that doesn't really have any guidance to it. It's kind of like we just want people to feel a certain thing. So anyway, that's just
yeah.
when you were talking about the words of songs,
Right.
it made me think of that as well.
Well, that's the I'm trying to I was trying to see if I could find the study. Maybe there's a study needs to be done, but kind of the boyfriendification of Jesus is
Yeah, right.
like people talk about like that there is a like an understanding of like if there's men in your church, again, the Psalms give us like we are the bride of Christ. Like there's a lot to be said for talking about the love that we have for Christ. And what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you as worship leader, are you wise about how you're framing it and doing it? Because there is a certain amount of like you can often lose men in the singing. Again, like it doesn't have to everything doesn't have to be like
Mm-hmm.
battle songs, but just are you aware of
Yeah.
the lyrics that you're singing and does it are they maybe too poetic, too flowery, too love song?
Yeah.
Um, can
Well,
you?
especially with our culture's misdefining of the word love,
Sure, yeah,
you know,
right,
we just have to kind of, I feel like we have a responsibility to be clear on that.
right, yep.
With regard to like helping lead our congregation and our teams in the long process of discipleship and sanctification. Um, do you have any other thoughts on ways that we can help our teams and congregation
I
do
mean,
that?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I said, just started this the formation to transformation devotional thing. Like, is an attempt to do it because I do feel the weight of
Right.
like knowing. I joke that like maybe I'm more of a Calvinist than I want to admit because like
Mm,
ultimately I can't force anything, and I don't. I can look at the fruit of everybody I know. I can even look at the fruit in my own life. But if I'm to work my own salvation out with fear and trembling, how much more so do I not get to know what's going on in the hearts of everybody on my team? Do I, can I sit there with a stamp and like, yep, you are being sanctified in the way that God intends for you to be sanctified at this moment? So really all I can do is offer things. And I think a
yeah.
lot of it just comes down to relationship. Again, making this podcast, it's great. But you could listen to it every single day. Again, you can read your Bible every day and still go nowhere with your relationship with the Lord.
Mm,
And it is a harrowing thought to know that I can't force that on you or for the worship leaders
right.
or production people on my team. I can't force them to have a great relationship. And I only can kind of, there's like surfacey sins and things like that that we can kind of watch for. But like ultimately, I can't know where your heart's at. So all I can do is, similar to Jesus, is just keep offering it, just keep talking about it, just keep trying to foster my own relationship. Again, I'm not
Mm,
perfect either, but like at least being aware of where I'm at. But even as I say that, knowing that like even if I'm terrible, God can still do what he needs to do. Like so
right.
it's a
Yeah,
weird like
exactly.
it doesn't
Right.
all rely on me
Takes
having
the
to
pressure off.
yeah, like my quiet time helps me like and it helps me know the Lord better and it helps me have much more fruitful conversations for sure. But ultimately it's not the linchpin. Like God's um not there to punish me when I don't do it and he's also not doing some magical things because I have more insight, but also having the right insight at the right time because I've been spending time in the Word is helpful and useful, and I've seen the Lord use
Yeah.
it. So, what a mystery it is to try to
I
walk
know,
this walk
right?
with the Lord.
Well, I love what you said at the beginning when you were talking about your podcast is that you're doing it for you. I mean, yes, you're doing it for other people, but you're doing it for you. Like I'm in this study. to just deepen in my own walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I'll be
think
reading
for
some
those
of
of
them and
us,
start crying myself while I'm trying to record them.
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, right. And I think that's a good practice for all of us as worship leaders. It's like as we grow in our knowledge of the Lord and our intimacy with him, we have to not think about how can this be used for my team or how can this be used for my congregation, but Lord, how can you use this in my own heart and life? How can you continue the sanctification process in my heart through what I'm reading right now and how I'm meditating on your word? And I think when we're more focused about ourselves, I think then that's when the overflow starts to happen, into our teams and into the people that we lead. So thank you for that. That's a great encouragement. All right. Thanks, Dr. Ryan.
yeah, thanks to you. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.